Once upon a time, in a small village surrounded by green hills and flowing streams, there lived a man named Ebenezer. He was known throughout the village as the richest person for miles around, yet he lived in the smallest, dreariest house on the poorest street. His windows were always shuttered, his garden was full of weeds, and his clothes were old and patched. Ebenezer had not always been this way. As a young man, he had worked hard as a merchant, traveling from town to town, selling fine cloth and beautiful trinkets. He was honest in his dealings and kind to his customers. Slowly, over many years, he saved every coin he earned, dreaming of the day when he would have enough money to live comfortably and help others in need. But as his pile of gold grew larger, something strange began to happen to Ebenezer's heart. Instead of feeling happy about helping others, he began to worry constantly about losing his money. Instead of buying nice things or sharing with his neighbors, he started to think that every coin spent was a coin lost forever. "I must save more," he would tell himself each night. "I must keep my gold safe." And so, year after year, Ebenezer spent less and less money, even on the things he truly needed. One day, Ebenezer looked at his enormous collection of gold coins and became frightened. "What if someone steals my treasure?" he worried. "What if thieves break into my house? What if there is a fire?" The thought of losing his gold made his stomach hurt and his hands shake. After many sleepless nights of worry, Ebenezer came up with what he thought was a perfect plan. On a dark, moonless night, he gathered all his gold coins into a heavy leather bag. He counted them one more time. There were exactly 1,000 pieces, each one shining like a tiny sun. Behind his house grew an old oak tree with thick, twisted roots. Using his shovel, Ebenezer dug a deep hole between two of the largest roots. The work was hard, and by the time he finished, his hands were covered with blisters, and his back ached terribly. But he felt it was worth it to keep his precious gold safe. Carefully, Ebenezer lowered the heavy bag into the hole and covered it with dirt. He smoothed the earth and scattered leaves over the spot, so that no one would know anything was buried there. Then he went to bed, feeling more peaceful than he had in months. The next morning, Ebenezer woke up and immediately thought about his gold. "I wonder if it's still safe," he worried. Even though he had just buried it the night before, he felt he had to check. He walked to the oak tree, looked around to make sure no one was watching, and carefully brushed away the leaves and dirt. There was his precious bag, exactly where he had left it. Ebenezer smiled with relief, covered it up again, and went back inside for breakfast. But instead of eating the bread and milk he had planned, he decided he didn't want to spend money on milk. Plain bread would be enough. The next day, Ebenezer found himself thinking about his gold again. "I should check on it," he told himself, "just to be sure." So again he went to the oak tree, dug up his treasure, counted every single coin, and buried it once more. This daily ritual became the most important part of Ebenezer's life. Every morning, as soon as the sun rose, he would hurry to his oak tree. He would dig up his gold, run his fingers through the shining coins, count them carefully, and then bury them again. The gold never seemed to lose its magical sparkle, and holding it made Ebenezer feel powerful and secure. But as the weeks turned into months, Ebenezer's life became stranger and stranger. He stopped buying meat at the market, telling himself that vegetables were healthier. Then he stopped buying vegetables, deciding that the wild plants in his yard were good enough. Soon he was eating nothing but stale bread and water, and even then, only the smallest portions. His clothes became more ragged, his house grew colder as he refused to buy firewood, and his once kind face became pinched and worried. The neighbors began to whisper about the strange man who had once been so generous, but now seemed afraid of his own shadow. "Poor Ebenezer," said Mrs. Rose, the baker's wife. "He used to buy fresh bread every day, and always left a coin for the charity box. Now he counts every penny twice before spending it." "I remember when he helped build the new school," said Tom the carpenter. "He gave more money than anyone else. I wonder what happened to make him so fearful." But Ebenezer didn't hear these kind words, because he had stopped talking to his neighbors altogether. He was too worried about protecting his secret. Every day, he made his lonely journey to the oak tree, and every day, he felt a little more afraid that someone might discover his treasure. Unknown to Ebenezer, someone had been watching him. A man named Jasper, who was known for taking things that didn't belong to him, had noticed Ebenezer's strange daily walks to the oak tree. At first, Jasper thought it was odd that someone would visit the same tree every morning. But as he watched more carefully, hidden behind the garden wall, he began to understand what was happening. "That old miser is burying something valuable," Jasper said to himself, "and if he visits it every single day, it must be worth a great deal indeed." One rainy night, when Ebenezer was fast asleep, Jasper crept into the yard with his own shovel. He knew exactly where to dig, having watched Ebenezer's ritual for weeks. Soon his shovel struck something hard, the leather bag full of gold. Jasper's eyes grew wide as he opened the bag and saw the 1,000 gleaming coins. "This is more gold than I've ever seen in my life," he whispered. Without a moment's hesitation, he slung the bag over his shoulder and disappeared into the stormy night. The next morning, Ebenezer woke up feeling especially anxious. The rain had been pounding on his roof all night, and he worried that the dampness might have damaged his gold somehow. He hurried to the oak tree faster than usual, brushed away the wet leaves, and began to dig. But when his shovel hit the bottom of the hole, there was nothing there, nothing at all. Ebenezer dug frantically, throwing dirt in all directions. He searched every inch of the area around the tree, thinking perhaps he had remembered the wrong spot. But there was no mistaking it. His precious gold was gone. "My gold!" Ebenezer screamed, falling to his knees in the muddy earth. "My beautiful, precious gold! Someone has stolen it!" He wept and wailed so loudly that neighbors came running from their houses to see what was wrong. "My treasure, my life's work, it's all gone," Ebenezer sobbed, pointing at the empty hole. His hair was wild, his clothes were covered in mud, and tears streamed down his face. A kind old woman named Sarah, who had known Ebenezer since he was a young man, knelt down beside him. "Oh, my dear friend," she said gently, "what treasure was buried here?" "My gold," Ebenezer cried. "All the gold I spent my whole life saving. 1,000 pieces, each one perfect and shining. I buried it here to keep it safe, and someone has stolen it." Sarah looked puzzled. "But Ebenezer," she said softly, "if your gold was buried here in the ground, how did it help you? You couldn't buy food with it, or warm clothes or medicine if you were sick." "Buy things?" Ebenezer looked up in shock. I couldn't spend my gold. If I spent it, then I wouldn't have it anymore. Sarah's wise old eyes filled with understanding. She stood up, walked over to the stone wall that surrounded the garden, and picked up a smooth, round stone about the size of Ebenezer's fist. She carried it back to the empty hole and gently placed it inside. "There," she said kindly. "Now you have a treasure again." Ebenezer stared at her in disbelief. "A rock? That's just a worthless rock. How can you say that's the same as my gold?" Sarah sat down beside him. "My dear Ebenezer," she said, "in all the time your gold was buried here, did you ever use even one coin to buy yourself a warm meal or help a friend in need?" "No," Ebenezer whispered. "Then," Sarah said gently, "your gold was no more useful to you than this stone. It sat in the ground, doing nothing to make your life or anyone else's life better." Ebenezer sat in silence, slowly understanding. His gold had been beautiful, but he had never allowed it to bring him joy. He'd been so afraid of losing it that he had forgotten how to live. "You're right," he said quietly. "I spent so many years worrying about my gold that I forgot to spend any of it on the things that really matter." Sarah smiled. "It's not too late to change. You still have your health, your home, and neighbors who care about you. Those are treasures that can't be stolen." From that day forward, Ebenezer began to live differently. He took a job helping the local carpenter, earning just enough to buy what he needed and a little extra to share. He bought firewood for warmth, seeds for a garden, and helped his neighbors when they needed it. The stone still sat beneath the oak tree, but Ebenezer rarely thought about it. He had learned that money buried in the ground was no better than a stone, but money used to create happiness, and kindness was the most valuable treasure of all. Moral of the story: wealth unused is worse than poverty. Money and possessions are only valuable when they help us live better lives and care for the people around us. The end.